You already had the divorce papers ready? How's that? I scared you, didn't I? Because I'm ready for this at any time. So you better cool down and reflect on what you just said. With that, my husband Lance got up and went into his room. My name is Alice, a 28-year-old office worker. I married Lance a year ago after meeting him on a blind date. He pursued me, and after a year and a half of dating, we decided to tie the knot. In hindsight, it may have been too soon, but I had always vaguely envisioned getting married and starting a family by the time I was 30, so I accepted his proposal. But I quickly realized that I should have been more cautious about such life-changing decisions. The first red flag came when Lance abruptly announced he was changing jobs right after we got married. "I'm changing jobs," he said, completely out of the blue. "Why so suddenly?" I asked, trying to understand his reasoning. "Because I can't show my full potential there," he replied confidently. I was taken aback, wondering what he meant. He informed me that he had already submitted his resignation and would be leaving his job at the end of the month. Although he was able to secure a new position, the salary was significantly lower than what he had been earning before. At the time, I thought it would be okay since I was also working, but then came the next surprise. Lance started pressuring me to quit my job. If Lance's new salary had been sufficient to cover our living expenses, I might have considered it, but with his recent job change and reduced income, quitting my job would have left us in a precarious financial situation. Despite Lance's assurances that his salary would soon increase, there was no clear timeline for when that would happen. Without my income, we wouldn't be able to save any money, and we'd struggle to cover basic expenses like rent and car maintenance. So I told Lance, "I won't quit my job until your salary goes up." Lance seemed to agree, but he kept asking me to quit, bringing it up repeatedly. Each time, I gave him the same response. A year into our marriage, his salary still hadn't increased, yet he continued to ask, "When are you going to quit?" I was tempted to sarcastically say, "Now," but I couldn't, not yet. If he wanted me to quit so badly, he needed to focus on earning more. Instead, he should concentrate on his work rather than persistently pressuring me. I began to wonder why Lance was so eager for me to quit my job, and eventually, I realized it. Lance wanted me to take care of his mother, Sarah. Whenever we visited my in-laws, Lance would say, "I just want to make things easier for you, Mom," and Sarah would respond, "Thank you, Lance. That's very kind of you." Lance would then glance at me, silently pressuring me to quit my job. He claimed his mother needed care, but the truth was Sarah wasn't ill at all. She was healthy, active, and financially independent, earning enough from her part-time job to enjoy her hobbies and social life. She didn't need my help at all. If I were Sarah, I'd be insulted by the notion that I needed to be taken care of when I was perfectly capable of taking care of myself. But Lance still insists that I should take care of his mother, Sarah. "Oh, if only one of us were home during the day, we could check on Mom every day," Lance blurts out, clearly expecting me to be that person. It's tiresome to keep hearing this, but I finally ask, "Sarah is in perfect health. What exactly do you want me to do?" "There's plenty you could do," Lance responds, almost as if it's obvious. "You could help with the housework, run errands for her. There's always something that needs doing." But Sarah has a part-time job and spends a lot of time socializing with her friends. She's not even home most of the day, I point out. "Even if Mom's not home, you could still do the housework, couldn't you?" he counters. What? Is he serious? "So, you want me to be her housekeeper?" It's becoming increasingly clear that Lance just wants to look good in front of his parents, to appear like the dutiful son. If he cares so much about taking care of them, he should be the one doing the housework. I have no patience for Lance's superficial pride. Naturally, I didn't quit my job, and I certainly didn't start visiting my in-laws daily. I only went over during holidays like New Year's. Thinking back, Lance has always been like this when we visit his parents. He would order me around, telling me to clean up, help Mom, or see if there's anything we need from the store. But I never took the initiative to do these things. When I pushed back, saying, "Don't you know this area better than I do? You should go to the store," he would always reply, "It doesn't count if I do it." What does that even mean? I'm starting to realize that it's not about caring for his parents at all. Lance just wants to boss me around to make himself feel good by appearing like the ideal son. Is he really more concerned with looking good than with actually caring about me? That's how I'm beginning to see him. when I boldly asked him, "Why don't you try helping out or quit your job to take care of your own mother?" Lance looked visibly uncomfortable, his face twisting in disgust. "That's not something I'm supposed to do," he retorted. "I'm giving you these instructions so that my mom will see you as a considerate and useful wife. You should appreciate how kind I am to you." So, in other words, he wants to dump all the inconvenient responsibilities on me while pretending he's doing something extraordinary. Well, I'm not your servant, your slave, or anything else. I certainly don't deserve to be belittled or treated like this in front of my in-laws. If Lance keeps making these unreasonable demands, I won't stay silent. I'll push back. But Lance remained the same, never changing his stance. He kept asking, "When are you going to quit your job?" And every time we visited his parents, he would order me around just like before. I had reached the end of my patience, so I decided it was time to have a serious conversation with my husband. "What do you mean, talk?" he asked, clearly annoyed. "I think we need to talk about our future," I replied. "Huh? What are you even trying to say?" he scoffed. "I'm honestly fed up, Lance. I'm fed up with you constantly asking me when I'm going to quit my job and pressuring me to take care of your mother." "Why are you fed up with that? You're my wife, and it's your duty to take care of your husband's parents," he shot back as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Don't you think that's a huge burden on me? Isn't it your responsibility as her biological child to help with the housework and care for your own parents?" I asked, trying to make him see reason. "No way," Lance snapped. "It's the wife's duty to do that. Are you really the kind of person who doesn't care about her family? I'm disappointed you'd even say such a thing." "Then let me ask you this," I countered. "How have you been taking care of my parents? If I asked you to take care of them, would you do it?" Lance looked at me blankly. "What are you saying? Why should a husband take care of his wife's parents?" "So that means you haven't been and won't take care of my parents?" I asked, feeling my frustration growing. "The husband's parents and the wife's parents are completely different," he replied, as if that explained everything. "What difference does it make? I don't understand," I said, exasperated. "I can't believe you're this clueless," Lance sneered. "It's like I'm talking to my old boss or something." "What are you trying to say?" I pressed. "I'm saying the husband's parents should always come first. The wife's parents should be your responsibility," he declared, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "What they?" So, in Lance's mind, the only family that matters is the one he's biologically related to. "I'm so disgusted by you," I snapped. "I'm not going to your parents' house anymore." "Huh? Why would you do that?" Lance asked, clearly taken aback. "Enough is enough. I'm tired of this," I retorted, my frustration boiling over. "No way. How dare you talk back like that?" Lance shot back, his voice rising. "My mom was right." "What do you mean, your mom was right?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "She said you're a badly behaved wife," Lance sneered. "That's why she gave me this." With that, he pulled a piece of paper out of his bag. It was divorce papers. "What? You already had the divorce papers ready?" I asked, shocked. Lance looked disturbingly proud of himself. "How's that? I scared you, didn't I? I'm ready for this at any time," he said smugly. "So you better cool down and reflect on what you just said." With that, Lance got up and went into his room, leaving me standing there in disbelief. No way. Why is Lance so selfish? And that triumphant look on his face, it's as if he thinks these divorce papers are some kind of weapon to make me submit to his will. The fact that Sarah had prepared the divorce papers made everything even clearer. Lance is nothing more than a mama's boy, eager to do whatever Sarah says while trying to boss me around. You've got to be kidding me. There's no way I'm letting Lance control me like this. Does he not realize that by pulling a stunt like this, he's already ended our marriage? His complete lack of common sense only makes me more determined. Lance had already filled out the divorce papers and handed them to me with the witness section signed by Sarah and his friends. It was obvious he was just waiting for me to fall in line. But instead, the next day, after Lance left for work, I filled out the rest of the divorce papers and submitted them to the city office. Just to be safe, I'd also filed a notice of non-acceptance of the marriage certificate, ensuring that there would be no way to reverse this decision. I called my parents to explain the situation because I knew Lance, who had given me the divorce papers as a threat, might try to file the marriage certificate on his own if he found out I had already submitted the divorce papers. My parents were shocked that I had gone through with the divorce so quickly, but were even more outraged by Lance's behavior. They immediately offered to help me move my belongings. I took a paid leave and had my parents come over while Lance was at work. Together, we moved everything out to my parents' house. I decided to stay with them for a while, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of comfort and peace. Looking back, Lance never did any housework. I was the one cooking dinner after a full day at work, cleaning, and doing laundry on my days off. On top of all that, he expected me to take care of his parents, which was simply unreasonable. That night, my phone rang. It was Lance, who must have just returned home. Hello? Hey, where are you right now? Lance demanded. I'm at my parents' house, I replied calmly. What? Why the hell would you go back to your parents' house without my permission? And where's all your stuff? Don't tell me you're staying there overnight. He sounded panicked. I almost laughed. How could he not realize I had taken most of my belongings with me? The fact that he thought I was just staying overnight spoke volumes about his selfishness. I moved out, I stated firmly. I'm not coming back. Huh? What the hell are you talking about? Come back here and make me some food, Lance demanded, his voice rising in frustration. You can prepare it yourself, I said, and without waiting for a response, I hung up the phone. I knew I couldn't have a rational conversation with Lance about the divorce if he was going to be like this, so I decided to block his number and wait for him to come to me. A week later, Lance finally lost his patience and showed up at my parents' house. But he didn't come alone. He brought his parents with him. All three of them looked grim as they entered the living room. We sat facing each other, 3 against 3. How could you do this? Lance started, his voice laced with indignation. I can't believe you would leave for such a long time without my permission. That's because you were treating me like your personal housekeeper, I replied calmly. All I asked was for you to take care of my family. Lance shot back as his parents, especially Sarah, glared at me. Don't twist things to suit your convenience, I countered. You've been forcing me to handle everything you don't want to deal with. I've told you over and over, that's not what I meant. Lance insisted, but his words rang hollow. Sarah jumped in, her voice sharp. What kind of wife are you? Lance has done so much for you. My father, who had been sitting quietly, began to tremble with anger. Sensing that he might lose his temper, I spoke up before things could escalate. Lance told me to quit my job and take care of Sarah. He said it was my duty as his wife, I explained. But when it comes to my family, he pushes all the responsibility onto me alone. In the end, Lance just wants me to obey him, take care of his parents, and let him take credit for it. He even told me that his parents were more important than mine, and that they should always be the priority. I could see the surprise on my father-in-law Robert's face. He looked at Lance, clearly taken aback. It was evident that Robert hadn't heard any of this before. And to top it off, I continued, Lance suddenly pulled out divorce papers, claiming it was Sarah's idea. What? Robert turned to Sarah, his tone questioning. Did you really suggest that to Lance? Sarah hesitated, flustered. Well, it's just that Alice has been so difficult. And did you really say that Alice's parents aren't a priority? Robert pressed. Lance stammered. Well, it's just normal for your own parents to come first, right? Don't be ridiculous, Robert snapped. I came here because I thought you were facing unreasonable hardships, but from what I'm hearing, you're the one at fault. Don't be a coward and try to use your parents' influence to get your way. Lance shrank under his father's rebuke. Robert had said everything I had wanted to say to Lance and more. He then turned to me and my parents, offering a sincere apology. I'm sorry, Alice, he said, his voice full of regret. And to you both as well, he added, nodding to my parents. I am truly sorry for the trouble my foolish son has caused you, Robert said, his voice heavy with regret. I will give him a strict lecture. Robert, you're not at fault here, I replied gently. Please don't blame yourself, and thank you for your kind words. I took a deep breath, but there's one more thing I need to say. Lance, sensing something serious, asked, What do you mean? The divorce papers you gave me, I began. I've already filed them. We're no longer married. What? No. Lance and Sarah both turned pale, shock washing over their faces. How could you do that without my permission? Lance sputtered. You told me I could file them whenever I wanted. I reminded him, my voice steady. You even had Sarah sign the witness section for you. Lance stammered, but that was just to scare you. Robert's face darkened with anger as he turned to his son. So you used it to threaten her. I spoke up, echoing Robert's frustration. Exactly. He thought he could intimidate me. How could you be so foolish? Robert snapped, his patience finally snapping. He struck Lance on the cheek, causing Sarah to gasp in shock. I'm sorry you had to witness that, Robert said, turning back to me, his voice filled with remorse. You were right to divorce this idiot. I apologize on Lance's behalf for ruining your marriage. Robert then grabbed Lance by the collar and demanded, You and Sarah better apologize too. They both muttered apologies before Robert led them out of the house. I felt a wave of relief. Robert had saved my parents from losing their temper, and later he ensured that all of Lance's property went to me in exchange for no alimony. Lance didn't dare defy his father, so I ended up with all our savings and other assets from the marriage. Though I had a higher income and was the one managing the household, Robert's intervention ensured that the division was fair, and I couldn't thank him enough. I later heard that Robert was so disgusted with Sarah's involvement that he divorced her as well. Recently, I ran into a former colleague of Lance's who told me that Lance wasn't good at his job and was constantly reprimanded by his boss. Apparently, Lance had quit out of spite and switched jobs. I hadn't known about this, and it only reinforced my belief that Lance had blamed everyone else for his own shortcomings. He wasn't making much money at his new job, so I'm grateful I left him when I did. I've since rented a cozy one-bedroom apartment and have been living comfortably on my own. Work is going well, and I even got a raise recently. I'm not interested in relationships right now. I'm focused on my career and personal growth. Looking back, it was clear that Lance was more concerned with appearances than with actually improving himself. He could only maintain his dignity at home, but not in the real world. There are so many men like him who think divorce papers can be used as a threat, believing they hold all the power. But that's a huge mistake. I hope anyone in a similar situation finds the strength to break free, just like I did. And I hope Alice finds someone wonderful in the future. Thank you for reading until the end. Please subscribe to our channel and see you in the next video.